The story of Andreas Kisser is not just about music, fame, or heavy metal. It is about endurance in its purest human form. Known as the steady force behind Sepultura, Andreas built a legacy, not by chaos, but by resilience. On July 3, 2022, his life was shaken by the loss of his wife, Patricia. It was a moment that revealed the man behind the music, someone who had long carried invisible burdens. His journey is not defined by sound alone, but by the quiet strength to keep moving forward despite unimaginable loss. A loss that changed everything. When Andreas lost his wife to colorectal cancer, it marked one of the most painful chapters of his life. For decades, fans had seen him as unbreakable, a figure of control and discipline on stage. Yet this tragedy exposed a deeper reality. No amount of distortion or volume could silence grief. While audiences associated him with aggressive riffs and commanding performances, his personal life told a quieter story of love and loss. This moment did not weaken him publicly, but it deepened the emotional weight behind everything he continued to do afterward. The silent backbone of Sepultura. Unlike Max Cavalera, who embodied raw energy and rebellion, Andreas played a different role in Sepultura. He was not the founder, nor the most flamboyant member, but he became its anchor. When the band faced internal conflicts and major lineup changes, Andreas remained. Through decades of uncertainty, he held the structure together. His contribution was less about image and more about stability. This quiet leadership helped Sepultura survive when many expected it to collapse, making him essential to its legacy. A childhood far from metal born on August 24, 1968, in São Bernardo do Campo, Brazil, Andreas grew up in an environment far removed from heavy metal. His home was filled with culture, education, and music of a softer kind. His father, a German engineer, and his mother, a teacher with European roots, created a household where art and language thrived. Music was present, but it was gentle. Records by the Beatles and Brazilian artists played regularly. Nothing in those early years hinted at the aggressive sound that would later define his career. The first guitar and early influences, Andreas's musical journey began with a simple gift, a modest guitar from his grandmother. It was not glamorous, but it was enough. At just 10 years old, he began learning basic chords and practicing classical techniques. His early training was rooted in discipline rather than rebellion. He explored Brazilian folk melodies and focused on precision. These formative years were crucial as they built the technical foundation that would later support his complex metal compositions. At that time, music was still a peaceful companion, not yet the force that would shape his identity. Discovery of rock and metal. Everything changed when Andreas was introduced to rock music through cassette tapes shared by friends. Bands like Queen and Kiss opened a new world. Suddenly, music was louder, more emotional, and more intense. Electric guitars screamed, and drums thundered with power. This was no longer background music, it demanded attention. For Andreas, it felt like discovering a hidden language. The shift from soft melodies to aggressive sound ignited something within him, transforming his relationship with music forever. Life-changing concert experiences. One of the defining moments in Andreas's youth came in 1983 when he saw Kiss perform live in São Paulo. The spectacle, fire, noise, and energy left a lasting impression. 2 years later, attending Rock in Rio to watch AC/DC intensified that feeling. Standing among thousands of fans, Andreas experienced the raw power of live performance. These concerts were not just entertainment. They were revelations. They showed him what music could become, a force capable of uniting people and creating unforgettable experiences. From that point on, his path became clearer. From practice room to passion. After those experiences, Andreas's dedication to guitar grew stronger. What began as a hobby turned into an obsession. He spent hours practicing, refining his technique, and experimenting with heavier sounds. The quiet boy who once played folk tunes was now exploring speed, distortion, and intensity. His musical identity was evolving rapidly. Practice sessions became longer and more focused, driven by a desire to master the instrument. This transformation marked the beginning of his journey toward becoming a professional musician, though he had yet to step onto a real stage. First, bands and creative growth. In high school, Andreas found like-minded friends and formed his first band. They rehearsed in garages with limited equipment, driven purely by passion. Initially performing covers of bands like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden, he learned how to channel emotion through music. Over time, the group evolved, and Andreas began writing original material. His riffs became faster and heavier, influenced by the rising thrash metal scene. This period was crucial for his artistic development as he transitioned from imitation to creation. The making of a metal musician. As Andreas continued composing, his style became more defined. He was no longer just playing music, he was shaping it. His early bands gave him the confidence to experiment and take risks. The raw energy of thrash metal resonated with him, pushing him to explore new techniques and sounds. These experiences prepared him for the opportunity that would change his life, joining Sepultura. By the time he entered the band, he had already built a strong foundation, both technically and creatively, ready to contribute to something much larger. Endurance beyond the stage. What truly sets Andreas apart is not just his musical skill, but his resilience. Throughout his career, he faced challenges that extended far beyond the stage. Band conflicts, personal struggles, and profound loss. Yet he continued. His story is one of persistence, of showing up even when life becomes overwhelming. Unlike the explosive energy often associated with metal, Andreas represents something quieter but equally powerful: the ability to endure. His strength lies not in noise, but in consistency and determination. Conclusion. The life of Andreas Kisser is a testament to the power of endurance. From a quiet childhood filled with gentle music to the intense world of heavy metal, his journey is marked by transformation and resilience. He may not have been the loudest voice or the most visible figure, but he became the one who held everything together. Through personal loss and professional challenges, he continued forward. In the end, his story reminds us that true strength is not always seen. It is lived day by day in the face of everything that tries to break us.